Hi everyone, Expensive Burrito here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Vane FM album, This World Is Going to Ruin You. This is a brand new LP from the band formerly known as Vane, now Vane FM. They're from Boston, Massachusetts, and made a splash in 2018 with their pretty solid debut Error Zone, which a lot of metal fans found to be a breath of fresh air, not only due to the band's ferocity and mathematical riffs and grooves, but also the subtly glitchy ways that they would kind of embellish and enhance their tracks. In the end, I did find a lot of the LP to be more typical than groundbreaking for this style of music, but there was enough there to kind of wonder what the next step in Vane FM's evolution would be. And This World Is Going to Ruin You does feel like a slightly more ambitious outing in some ways. For one, I do appreciate that many of the tracks on this thing segue and tie into each other very tightly, which helps make this 32-minute project sound like a noisy and crushing monolith. I think the band also tries to strike a note of accessibility with some of these tracks too, with cleanly sung choruses that provide a bit of an oasis among the hellish riff-laced landscapes. But despite all the band's efforts on this new LP, I still find this project to be falling short a little bit. To start, the way the material blends together on this project is sort of a blessing and a curse. Sure, it does contribute to some sense of cohesion, but simultaneously, it does make some of these songs feel a bit like a blur in the moment. Some of the most memorable spots on this thing, funnily enough, are the shortest, like the heavy and lumbering, almost industrial-style riffs on the intro track Welcome Home. I couldn't ask for a more punishing start to this record. Then there's Versus Wyoming, which suddenly hits with these incredible, just thrilling noisecore guitars, really synced up with the drums and eventually building up to this rush of strings and piano that are totally just horrifying. The clean vocal passages I alluded to earlier definitely stick out too, but maybe not always for the best reasons. The track Fear and Nonfiction, for example, despite all of its rage, it still just kind of ends up sounding like a bad, nasally version of a late-era Slipknot chorus, which I'm not too crazy about. Then Wherever You Are is a somewhat spacey, despondent interlude, washed in reverb and mostly based off of these very loose bass and drum grooves, some distant piano ringing out too. I partially appreciate it as a breather on such an explosive record. It says the band is paying attention to the macro picture of this record and thinking of how the listener is going to experience the whole thing. Again, it shows in a sense the band is trying and they're bringing more intensity, they're bringing more variation, but is that variation leading to passages I actually want to hear? Not necessarily. It's not all bad though. There's the track Magazine Beach, for example, which is a pretty solid fusion of the band's metalcore stylings with some smooth 2000s era alt metal chorus lines. Maybe something the Deftones fans could go crazy for, though I'm not entirely sure what they would glean from a track this short. In tribute to that same era of loud rock, the song Inside Design sports at the very end what sounds like some DJ cuts, which sync up kind of okay with the heavy headbanging riffs. Meanwhile, the final moments of this LP are some of the longest here, and I know in the grander scheme of things, tracks that are 3 or 4 or 7 minutes may not be that long, but it is a lot when you consider the last 4 tracks of this thing, in terms of runtime, make up about half of the album, which in a way makes these tracks a test of whether or not the band can really go the distance here. And I would say the results are yes and no. The song HELLNIGHT has some of the most discordant and crushing guitar layers on the entire LP. I actually wish there were more portions on this record where the band experimented this much with just layering and guitar tone, because damn, this thing is just smothering. ORGY in the Morgue. Great title. Stays pretty interesting from end to end too, with some occasional shots of what sounds like some sound effects and tones lifted straight out of a horror movie soundtrack. There are some unhinged lyrics to match on this one too. De-evolution is projected in the margins of its own excess. Lamp, toaster, bed, desk, chair, door, bird. These are just words. They don't matter. We are the wound. Deeper into the track lyrically, I feel like I'm listening to melodramatic emo nihilism. Wavery pushes things into a slower, more brooding direction. Past the introduction, that nu metal angst comes back in a big way, and ultimately hits like a reminder of why it went away in the first place. Look, I love that the band is putting forward the effort to show some versatility on this project. That is great. But there's probably dozens of ways to sharply go about that, which convey darkness and maybe a bit of melodicism too, which is what leads me to wonder, why are these vibes repeatedly manifesting in some of the most tired and awful cliches from 2000s era pop metal? Still, this song does have a better structure and a grander finale than I anticipated, given how brief a lot of the material on this thing has been up until this point. The howling and layered and crushing tones on the back end of the track are just frightening. But then we have the closing track, Funeral Sound, which is my least favorite on the entire LP. What does make this track such a low point for me was just how long-winded the intro is. A lack of, I guess, any ideas to what to do at this point leads to a lot of shots of noise occurring that play out almost like jump scares. The second half of the track pushes through with a lot of so-so riffs. While the production is very heavy, very pummeling, the guitar and forlorn vocal and piano combo feels kind of overdone. Yeah, unfortunately, while in one breath I can't appreciate that Vane FM pulled out a lot of stops on this record and really tried to extend themselves here into something new, something different, I'm still not all that crazy with how a lot of it panned out. And ultimately walk away from this thing feeling a little mixed, just like with their last record, but for somewhat different reasons. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 6 on this one. Tran, Zishin, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Vane FM, forever.